All right, students, this is part 2 of your video assignments. So for the upper graders, we're going to be delving a little bit deeper into Vivaldi as a composer and also a little bit more about the piece and the structure, okay? So as you're listening to the piece, you're going to notice that you hear strings, okay? So we're talking about the string family, and Vivaldi was most known for writing music for strings. Before we talk a little bit more about the music and how that's all set up, we're going to talk about Vivaldi as a composer. So you can either listen to me or you can pull up the document that I attached with the title Springs, Vivaldi, and read along with me, okay? So Antonio Vivaldi was born March 4, 1678, and he died July 28, 1741. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read what you have on your sheet. So again, just listen if you want to, or you can read along with me. Antonio Vivaldi was born in Venice, Italy, which is where he spent most of his life. His father, a professional musician at St. Mark's Church, taught him to play the violin, and the two often performed together. Although Vivaldi was ordained a priest in the Catholic Church, he was called the Red Priest because of his flaming red hair. Health problems prevented him from celebrating the Mass, and he was not associated with any one particular church. He continued to study and practice the violin and became a teacher at a Venetian orphanage entitled La Pietà for young girls, a position he held for the rest of his life. The orchestra of this institution became famous, and people came from miles around to hear Vivaldi's talented students perform the beautiful music he had written for them. Vivaldi was one of the most influential composers of his time. He wrote operas, sonatas, and choral works, but is particularly known for his concertos, over 500 of them, although some may have been lost. One of the most famous sets is the Four Seasons. After his death, Vivaldi's music was virtually forgotten for many years. However, in the early 1900s, many of his original scores were rediscovered, and his popularity and reputation have continued to grow since that time. Okay, so that gives you a little background information about Vivaldi. So as soon as you play Spring, you're gonna, oh, I know this piece. It's in movies, it's in commercials, it's all over the world. And it's all coming from Vivaldi. So the Four Seasons is a group of 4 concertos talking about the 4 seasons. Okay, so we have spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Okay, so if we had a lot of time, we would go through every single concerto, but for this week, we're only going to be focusing on spring. So Vivaldi was inspired by this sonnet that I'm going to read to you. Actually, I read to you in the previous video already, so I won't do that again. But he was inspired by the words, and the text really is what structured the concerto. Okay, so we're going to talk about the structure of the concerto in 1 second. But if you're following along on your page, you're going to see that there's some questions. Okay, the first question is, this concerto has a feeling of A, constant motion and change, or B, stillness. The music is the same the whole way. So keep that question in mind as you are listening to this piece. Okay, it's going to be really, really obvious because it's just very obvious. So don't worry too much about that. The second question to keep in mind, what is the name of the family of instruments used in this concerto? A, brass family, or B, the string family? I gave this answer away, so if you were listening, you know the answer. Number 3, does the music gradually change from soft to loud, or do the changes happen suddenly? Okay, so A is gradually using crescendos or decrescendos. Now remember, crescendo means getting louder from a soft volume, and you're getting louder and louder and louder. And decrescendos, you start loud, but then you get softer and softer and softer. Or suddenly, which is the B, using terrace dynamics. So terrace dynamics, they're really cool because they're like these sudden changes in dynamics. So if you ever are going into a garden or something like that, sometimes you see like terraces, you know, where you have one level here and then the next level is here and then here and here. So a terrace dynamic is a sudden change. So your top terrace is forte up here, and if you drop down suddenly to piano, is a sudden terrace dynamic change. Another way to do that is talking about subito dynamics or sudden dynamics. Okay, so number 4 question is there any part of the music that sounds like the instruments are playing around? Okay, so remember, around is kind of like row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, and then someone starts in again, and the sound is going over and over, around and around and again, okay? So is it a round, yes or no? Okay, so those are some questions to have in your mind. The answers of those you can kind of incorporate into your 2 paragraphs if you choose to write the 2 paragraphs. If you choose to just draw a picture, you don't have to answer them necessarily, but just keep them in the back of your mind. Okay, so we're going to discuss how the structure of the piece is done. Okay, so during this type of music in the Baroque time period, we had a lot of interesting ideas based off of art and architecture and things like that. So the Baroque era, if you look at artwork from that time, it's very gilded, it's ornate, it's a lot, you know, it's not simple, it's not minimalistic, it's just very, very detailed. So the music is also very detailed too. And we have lots of alternations between the entire group and then special sections of soloists, okay? So when you're watching the video, if you're reading along in the score, you're gonna see where you have the entire orchestra playing, and then you have just a couple soloists playing at the same time. So scroll down to your page. This is where I need you to follow along with your PDF. And it says Spring Listening Map. Okay, so here are the directions for this. Now it's your turn to follow the story of Spring, the concerto, through the music. Follow the clues below to help you along your way. The instrument's pictures will let you know if a large or small group is playing at the time. Listen for imitation. Now, imitation is when it's copying something else, okay? You know, when you're little and your sister, your brother says, "Don't copy me," and you say, "Don't copy me." That's what imitation is. So while you're listening to that, follow along and track either with like a finger or like a little eraser, a penny or something, as the picture is changing, okay? So the first one where you start, you have the it says alternates between loud and soft, and the picture is of the orchestra, okay? The next one is just the soloist, okay? So that's when you're gonna hear the soloist. Okay, so that's kind of a good way to track it as you're listening if you need something to do, so you're not bored. Okay. Now, go to the bottom of your page where you see the 4 graphics. It says unscramble the seasons. This will be really easy for you guys, but it's kind of a fun little activity to do. And there's also some directions about how you draw your picture, okay? You don't need to mail it to Ohio because we're not doing that part of the activity. Okay, so that gives you a little bit more background information about Vivaldi and the 4 seasons. The piece is super energetic. You're gonna love it. That also has some beautiful calm moments too. So this is just giving you guys a little bit more information. So please take your time to either draw the images that pop in your head after you are listening to this piece, or write out the 2 paragraphs, okay? So make sure you email me your assignment. I hope you have a great day and enjoy. Bye.